Good day everyone! Today I want to show you a package that just arrived at the office. I hereby present you a box from China. But what's in the package, I hear you say? Well, let's find out. The first thing in the box is a cloth bag and some controllers. The bag is probably meant for the controllers because I don't think it will fit the pièce de résistance. Next up are two retro Super Nintendo controllers with USB. The controllers feel a bit cheap though, the buttons are not great, but then again, back then the controllers didn't really have the quality controllers have nowadays. The cable is about 1.5 meters, which is a bit short, but I do have an 8-bit dual controller laying around somewhere, so I don't expect to be using them too much. Next, we have ourselves an HDMI cable. This cable has a standard HDMI and a micro HDMI connector, which we will use to connect our new console to our television. The cable allows us to pass through 4K video, but unfortunately I still own a 1080p television, so I won't be using it to its full potential. I do so hate these packages. This is the micro HDMI connector. You're probably all familiar with the normal HDMI one already, but I haven't seen the micro HDMI connector being used very much yet. We also have some small peripherals, like a converter to our EU power plug, another micro HDMI to HDMI converter, a female one this time, a 23GB micro SD card, and no slow one added. This is needed to run the operating system for the Raspberry Pi from. Very nice that they included this, since I was just running out of micro SD cards. Let's see, there is some more minor stuff here. I think this is an American power plug. But finally, we have the moment that you've been waiting for. The pièce de résistance. A brand new NesPi for Raspberry Pi case. I'm very excited to try this one out. The NesPi 4 case. I've not opened this box before, I only saw it in a video once or twice, so I don't know exactly what I can expect. Ah, look, there's some small explanation on the back, though this is mainly about the connectors. Back in my student dorm I used to have a RetroPi setup, though it was still on a Raspberry Pi 3, it worked pretty decent. So this is it, a replica of the original Nintendo Entertainment System. These buttons will work for booting and shutting down the Pi, and even resetting it. To the right we find USB 3 and USB 2 port for our controllers, and under this latch is the coolest part of this case. Now we have an empty cartridge here, it looks exactly like the old NES cartridges. And in here, I don't know, can you see this? In here there's actually a SATA connector that can be used for 2.5-inch drives. It is connected to the Pi via a USB 3 bus, so you can actually store your games on a cartridge. Oh, wait, I'm forgetting something. What is this? Ah, here we have a power plug. This plugs into the USB-C power connector on the back of the NesPi to power the entire thing. Oh wait, I believe this is an American power plug, so the one I just threw away was something else. If I'm right, we can plug our EU converter on this and then plug it into our own wall sockets. Handy, but bulky. It is quite a complete set. Let's see, am I missing something? No, this is only the manual. Let's see, how do I open this? Just pull it apart? Ah, that seems to do the trick. I truly haven't done this before, I only saw it in a video once and thought, I need to have this. Ah, look, there's an enormous cooler in there. That may come in handy when we want to emulate some more intensive games. This thing is truly big for a Pi. The camera has a hard time focusing on it though. I'm also wondering how much airflow there is in this case, since I haven't seen real gaps except for the connector holes, I think. In the top side we have the SATA slot I showed before, and here we can see it connects to the Raspberry Pi using a USB 3.0 cable, which gives us some very nice speeds when we insert a hard drive or SSD. And in the bottom part we find most of our electronics. What is this? Yeah, okay, I haven't inserted the SD yet. Small screwdriver set, always nice. And here we have a USB 3, USB 2 and Ethernet port. I guess they are patched directly to the connectors of the case. Installation time. Together with the NesPi 4 case, we also ordered a brand new Raspberry Pi 4. It also arrived early this morning, so you can imagine I had a pretty good day so far. I looked at it briefly, but since I ran out of SD cards, I put it back in the box. I spared no expense for this build and ordered the 8GB RAM version. I want to install RetroPie in combination with Kodi. As I said before, I used to run a similar setup in my student dorm and was pretty pleased with that. Let's put this thing together. First I need to insert the USB and Ethernet connectors. Oh, look, we have another hole here for the microSD card. I also notice now that there are some air holes in the bottom of the case. The Ethernet connector has a click mechanism. Handy. The USB connectors are more of a challenge now. Let's see how I can plug those in. It's quite hard to get them in. The Pi itself fits perfectly in the case. Oh, here we have a missed opportunity. The lower USB 2 port on the Pi is no longer accessible. On the other hand, once the case is closed, you can't exit it anymore anyways. Okay, so I looked at the manual and it seems like I completely forgot the fan that needs to be installed. The screws go through the fan into the top of the case, so let's install that. Retroflag even added two small thermal pads to help transfer the heat from the processor and RAM to the cooler. I need to install those first. Next up is the cooler itself. It has very small power connector, so I will try to connect it using some tweezers. Now I have to make sure that the cable doesn't get into the fan. If I'm right, I have to install the first two screws from this side. I also found out there is another cable. This one has to be installed on the GPIO header, but I had to check the manual to make sure which way to install it. This cable will power the Raspberry Pi and is connected to the power and reset button in the front. That also means that these buttons won't work out of the box. I have to install a script for that. That's all explained in the manual. There's even a small switch inside of the case which we can use to toggle between triggering the safe shutdown, well, or not. It doesn't really state what happens if we don't safe shutdown, but my guess is it will just disconnect the power from the Pi. I guess all that's left to do for the assembly of a NesPi is to mount the top part. All I need to do for that is connect this USB 3 cable, which is connected to the SATA slot, and then screw everything shut. Oh, look, there's some breathing holes for the cooler. I mean, it's not much, but I doubt very much airflow is needed. Though I might run some tests with the temperature later. So, I will just plug in the USB 3 cable and then put on the lid. Yes, we installed our Raspberry in the NesPi case. The installation was quite easy, but I recommend consulting the manual every now and then. On the back of the case we find the two micro HDMI and the audio connectors of our Pi. And to the right are the USB-C connector to power the console and the Ethernet connector. On the side of the case we find the Raspberry's micro SD slot, which will run the operating system. To the front we have our USB 2 and 3 directly patched to the Pi. And we have our power and reset button. What I haven't explained yet is the little latch at the bottom of the NesPi. This is meant to be a microSD storage, though I think not putting some small clamps in there for the SD cards is a missed opportunity. The reason this is here at all is because the original NES had the same latch, though in the NES it hid an expansion slot that eventually was never used. Rumors are that Nintendo had planned to sell a separate CD-ROM reader that never made it to market. And finally we have our SATA slot, which brings me to the final piece of the puzzle, our cartridge. I looked for some straight 2.5-inch drives and came to the unfortunate conclusion that this cartridge will only fit very slim drives. So if you want to make use of this, make sure you have a drive of max 7mm thick. The drive itself is very easy to install. Just put it in the bottom part of the cartridge, then press the top part firmly on it until you hear a click. Now we bolt everything down with 4 screws. So, that is the assembly of the NesPi. It is easily the most amazing Pi case I've ever seen. The ultimate RetroPi console. In my next video I will go over the installation of RetroPi and setting everything up to have an amazing home entertainment system for in the living room. If you don't want to miss that, like this video, subscribe to the channel and don't forget the notification bell so you will be informed when my next video is up. Now all we need to do is push the cartridge into the NesPi just like back in the day.